What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CashCore podcast. I'm your host, Bone, and as always, I have my CashCore DFS bro with me, Slick. What's up, Slick?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Nothing. Felt like we needed to jump on here, man. As a Giants fan, Bone myself is a Giants fan, and Slick is a Washington football team fan, and it's just hard to ignore all the talk around last night. So I felt like we need to jump on and discuss this.
Yeah, and usually we jump on Monday to talk about Monday Night Football. There is no Monday Night Football. Playoffs are set. Football's regular season is behind us. But yeah, it was a crazy way to finish the season last night.
Yeah, well, congrats to you and as a fan. The Washington football team is going to the playoffs, going to host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next Saturday night. Tom Brady comes into town. We'll see if they have Mike Evans or not. We'll get to a little preview in a little bit. But how you feeling about that?
You know, it's exciting. It's nice to, I'm more excited to see there seems to be a culture change in Washington. We don't seem to be the laughing stock anymore. We have a reputable coach, reputable D coordinator. Chase Young was obviously a great pick at 2.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I know, and Alex Smith gets a bad rap for being a game manager, but when you don't have the weapons that some of these other teams have, like we're about to play the Buccaneers, who have any of their receivers would be a number 1 on the football team right there with McLaurin. So when you don't have those weapons, sometimes you need a game manager. So yeah, I like what they do. They're not putting their defense in disadvantaged positions, and they're not going to, if they win, it's not going to be pretty, but they're competitive. And as a fan of a team who hasn't been competitive in almost 30 years consistently, it's nice to see them competitive.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that Chase Young gives you a cornerstone to build around. Young leader, obviously. Chris Collinsworth couldn't stop talking about him last night. So yeah, congrats, good for you. Yay.
Yeah, no, we built a team around Tress Way about 6 years ago, and he's been a perennial Pro Bowler for us, and yeah, it's all coming together finally.
Yeah, nice.
You draft enough Alabama defensive linemen.
Yeah, eventually it's going to work out.
Yeah, eventually you can put a little defense together. So yeah, it's fun. So you, on the other hand, as a Giants fan, not as happy, I don't think.
Well, yes, but I'm not necessarily. So it's interesting. My unhappiness, and I've obviously had not a lot of time, but I've all day I've kind of been going over this in my head, processing what I watched last night. But even as it was happening, I wasn't mad. And we're talking about the pull Jalen Hurts for Sudfeld in the fourth quarter of a game that was very winnable. Doug Peterson pulled the best player on the field last night, and up until that point, Jalen Hurts was the best player on the field.
And he had a chance to take the lead on that fourth and goal. I mean, the wide receiver was wide open.
Yes, he did. Or you could have kicked the field goal, whatever you want to say. But as a Giants fan, I'm not angry at Doug Peterson. The people that should be angry at Doug Peterson are his players, and I have a feeling that they are. Right? Tanking is not something new. And I'll get to them. I'm more upset with the Giants. Like they have as much blame as anybody, or the most blame, for not getting into the playoffs. All you have to do is win 7 games. But as far as tanking goes, I think it was so prevalent last night because it was on prime time, Sunday Night Football, right? When the NFL decided to put this game in the prime time slot, did they consider that the Eagles might not have nothing to play for or anything to play for? And that's what we ended up seeing. Now, was it blatant, and was it in a situation that, obviously the Eagles had a chance to win? Yes, but as I said, tanking is not new. Go back and take a look at the 2010 go back to 2010. Carolina Panthers start Matt Moore the whole year, knowing well that Cam Newton's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. What happens? Carolina ends up with the number 1 pick. Go watch week 17 of the Cards and the 49ers in 2010. Okay? What happened in week 17? The loser got the 5 seed, and the winner got the 7 seed. So the Cardinals started pulling all their players out in the second half. They end up losing the game. They draft Patrick Peterson at 5. Julio Jones goes 6, and San Francisco ends up drafting Aldon Smith, who's a good player, but he's not Patrick Peterson or Julio Jones. 2011, Colts, suck for luck. 2014, do you remember this game? This was a huge deal. Do you remember 2014, week 17, up 20? The Buccaneers were up 20-7 at halftime against the Saints. They were in the same situation where they were going to get the number 1 pick. They wanted Jameis Winston. They were up 20-17 at the half. They pulled out Mike Evans. They attempted 3 passes in the second half, and McNown took a safety to pretty much on the last meaningful play of the game to ensure a number 1 pick. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, again, like you said, this is nothing new. This has
Right.
happened for years, not just in football and other sports, where teams have to do things to position themselves to be better. You put the Eagles on prime time, who were not playing for anything. It was very well known. They weren't playing for, if anything, they were playing for the Giants, which NFC East teams don't like each other.
Well,
So that's not a lot of incentive for them just to get up for a game. And it was evident in all the inactives before the game even started.
absolutely. And then a couple more recent examples. 2016 Browns were one of the worst teams on paper you could imagine. That whole Moneyball idea that they were going to tank and come back, and sure enough, they got a couple number one picks since then. Myles Garrett that next year, and then Baker Mayfield. And hey, they're going to the playoffs. And oh, by the way, so this is now I'll get into kind of the Giants, right? The Giants fans, as a Giant fan, I can't get mad at the Eagles if any of the following came out of my mouth. When the Giants were 0-2, 0-3, 0-4, 0-5, did we say tank for Trev? Did that possibly come out of any of our mouths? Right? Wasn't that a thing this year? The Jets, the Jags, the Giants, tank for Trev back when I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence. Or last year when the Giants had the chance to lose to the Redskins and the Dolphins in week 15 and 16 last year in order to stay in the number 2 spot and get your boy Chase Young. So I can't be hypocritical of the Eagles last night. If at any point I was like, man, I'd be okay with the Giants maybe doing a couple things to lose these games. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and Chase Young is a pretty good football player.
Right.
Literally watched him blow up a run pass op. He blew up both parts of a run pass option last night.
Yes.
By himself.
He RKO and RPO last night. He did that.
He's an absolute monster. And it's funny because the Redskins-Giants game that you're speaking of at the end of the season was pretty much for the number 2 pick. Game went to overtime, and the Redskins defense just said, go ahead, go down the field, do what you got to do, because you kind of saw the writing on the wall and where they wanted to go, and pretty much gifted the Giants that win. But you made a good point before we came on that if this was a 1 o'clock game,
right,
would anybody be talking about it? It was in prime time. All the eyes were on it. The announcers were making a big deal of it. Then you have the social media in the Twitter world making a big deal of it. But yeah, this is something that always happens, and it just happened to happen in prime time. And so, yeah, it's the hot topic of the day.
And look, as far as I'm concerned, I went back through the Giants' schedule. There are many opportunities the Giants had, and this is my point. And I think Giants fans understand this. At the same time, we're angry with the Eagles. And oh, by the way, Giants-Eagles has to be the Week 1 Sunday Night Football game next year, right? Like
it might be more exciting than a Super Bowl rematch.
Right. It has to. You put that one on Thursday night, but you got to put the Giants and let Collinsworth run it back with the Giants and Eagles, after what he said in the fourth quarter last night. So anyway, look, the Giants in Week 1, I remember this clearly. The Steelers muffed a punt on the first punt of the game and gave the Giants the ball on the 1 yard line. The Giants didn't punch it in. Punch the ball in, maybe that game goes differently. Watch the clock management against the Bears in Week 2. In Week 5, we lined up illegal formation on a fake field goal that ended up in a touchdown against Dallas. Week 6, all I got to say, Evan Ingram catch the ball against Philadelphia, and we're good. Week 7, 14-3 lead against Tampa Bay. Daniel Jones has 2 terrible turnovers, that lead to scores and lets Tom Brady get back into the game. And Week 15, we've talked about this, and we talked about it on our pod because it was a showdown. Hey, maybe you let Graham Cano kick a couple field goals against the Browns instead of going 0 for 3 in the red zone with a backup quarterback. So as far as I'm concerned, the Giants have only themselves to blame. Hopefully we build. It was a good year in regards to, I think, Joe Judge and things like that. But we have to separate out what the Eagles did because it speaks more to what's going to happen now with the Eagles players and culture and how they feel about Doug Peterson. So as an NFC East guy, okay, Eagles, go mess with that mess now because, we have our own stuff to worry about. But I can't get mad at them for tanking because it's already prevalent in the NFL. I can be upset for the players on the Eagles because it was wrong what their coach did to them. Those guys train hard, they work hard, they want to play hard, they've earned the right to compete. You know what I'm saying? And knock someone else out of the playoffs, but their coach didn't allow them to. So that's their issue to deal with. The Giants have other issues to deal with. We need to separate it out. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I was pretty bitter when they didn't let Gano kick those field goals against the Browns. I had a lot of Gano in that showdown, and
yeah,
it was set up exactly like I wanted it to. And they just kept going for it with Colt McCoy as their quarterback.
So anyway, yeah, we were
it
talking.
doesn't make a lot of sense. But you know what's
No.
funny? What would have happened if the Cowboys would have beat the Giants?
Oh man.
And everything else happened the same way it happened last night. Because the polarizing team that is the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, Jerry Jones would have probably filed an injunction already.
But then would people be patting Doug Peterson on the back?
Possibly.
There's so much hate for the Cowboys.
Possibly.
Just an interesting scenario that could have unfolded if that would have gone the other way. But yeah, it is what it is. I think the football team, I don't want to say no team deserves it at 7-9. I mean, I feel bad for teams like the Dolphins who finished 10-6 and on the outside looking in. But we got a seat at the table. We got Tom Brady coming in. I know Chase Young made a comment leaving the field that he wants Tom. So hey, careful what you wish for. You're going to get him in prime time again.
I agree with you. The Washington football team, I feel, had the best unit in the NFC East. Their defensive front, I feel like, was the best unit, position unit in the NFC East, right?
And they also have the best. They have the best storylines, right? You have Alex Smith coming back, almost died from a football injury. Probably shouldn't have been on the field, but circumstances played out. They didn't really have a choice. And then Ron Rivera, what he's been dealing with, and not missing any time, and just being kind of, I wasn't 100% sold on the hire at first, but just watching the way he commands like the respect of his team.
So
it's nice to watch. Like I said,
I'm with you.
Culture
and I feel the same way about Joe Judge. Dave Gettleman's another story. We'll talk about that maybe at another time. But listen, happy for you guys. Happy as I can be for the Washington football team. Good luck next week. But yeah, what about next week just generally? What's in store for CashCore next week?
Yeah, well, so now I have the football team on the slate too, which always makes things interesting.
Yep.
How I like to evaluate my own team. But yeah, it is a big week for us. Like I said, usually we're doing our Monday night football showdown preview, but we wanted to go ahead and give you guys a kind of a preview of the content we're going to come out this week. And I think we're going to do things a little bit different because it's a huge week. We have 6 games this weekend, and all of them are meaningful, which means you're going to get each team's best shot, and that's what you want. You want the cards on the table so you know what you're dealing with when you're putting together some DFS lines. So I think we're going to do some game breakdowns each day this week. We're going to try to break down 2 games a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, maybe one AFC game, one NFC game. Kind of go through it through a DFS perspective with some nuggets about the game, some over-unders because the lines are already out, and just some players that maybe could pop, and some storylines we're looking to unfold that could kind of lead us in a DFS direction. And then as always, Friday coming out with our main slate podcast with our scouting report, because we have, not only do we have the 6-game weekend slate, we're also going to have 2 3-game slates, a Saturday slate, a Sunday slate.
Yes.
And 6 featured showdowns. Each showdown will be featured. There will be a lot of DFS action this weekend. We can't wait to break it down for you and give you guys some information through CashCore.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate you jumping on. I had to get some of my feelings off my chest. I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to talking football all week long. And as you said, you're going to have CashCore stuff, DFS stuff, and as a fan of the football team, getting ready for Tom Brady on Saturday night. So I appreciate you, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, check us out at CashCore DFS. Any feedback, we're always available in our DMs. Anything you guys want to talk DFS-wise, football-wise. I mean, we're sports junkies at heart. So, yeah, just, looking forward to it.
Yep. And that just about does it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Slick, and have a good rest of your day.
You too, man.
All right.
Later.